Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So in just 5 days, we're going to know exactly what the next Social Security cost of living adjustment increase is going to be looking like. And this has actually turned out to be more than previously expected at the beginning of this year. So in today's video, we are going to be covering all the numbers, how much of an increase you can expect to receive, and everything that you need to know. But before we go ahead and dive into for today, if you would like to receive up to $200 in free stock or $200 in free cash, in a pinned comment below, I will be leaving a link to Robinhood. All you have to do is once you click on that link is just sign up for a free account and then simply link your bank account. You do not even have to make an opening deposit. At that point in time, Robinhood will be sending you one free stock worth all the way up to $200. And if you'd rather just have the cash, all you have to do is once you receive the free stock is just sell it for what it's worth and then transfer the cash value right back to your bank account. Okay, so at the beginning of this year, there was expected to be some type of increase due to the cost of living adjustment, the COLA that happens pretty much every single year, but it was expected to be much lower than what it was this year. So this year we received a cost of living adjustment of 2.5%. The year before that was a little bit higher, and the year before that was even higher. We actually topped out at 8.7% for a cost of living adjustment. It happened, I believe it was a few years ago with inflation soaring higher and higher. That has since come down. So we were expected to have a lower cost of living adjustment this year. It was previously expected to be just 2.1%, according to the Senior Citizens League. And we actually had other projections lower than 2%. So a lot of people were believing that Trump was coming into office, that he was going to lower inflation through reduced spending, and that we would not see inflation continue to go higher. We would actually see it go lower as it was. But we actually saw an uptick in inflation, unfortunately, this year, which of course is also going to be resulting in a higher cost of living adjustment for next year in 2026. So according to the Motley Fool, federal funding lapsed in early October after Republicans and Democrats failed to resolve budget disputes. That forced a government shutdown that has dragged on for more than 2 weeks with no end in sight. The government will not reopen until Congress passes legislation to restore federal funding, either via a temporary spending measure of a full-year appropriations package. However, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has reconvened in limited capacity to compile its September inflation report, the final data required to determine Social Security's 2026 cost of living adjustment. The Social Security Administration plans to announce the official pay raise on October 24th, even if the government shutdown is still in effect. Here is what retirees should know. So again, in 5 days, on October 24th, we are going to know the official cost of living adjustment, whether or not the government decides to reopen. It looks like right now Republicans and Democrats are going to continue this fight for a long time. Right now, there is really no end in sight. They're playing this game of chicken, trying to see which side is going to look better, at least politically, as far as this shutdown goes. Republicans are blaming Democrats. Democrats are blaming Republicans. But again, the good news is the Bureau of Labor Statistics is back trying to compile the inflation numbers for the month of September. And once they do, they are going to plan on releasing those numbers by no later than October 24th. Now they're going here to say that Social Security benefits receive annual cost of living adjustment to ensure their purchasing power remains constant over time. The precise COLA in any given year depends on how the consumer price index for urban wage earners and clerical workers changes in the third quarter, the 3-month period that runs from July through September. The math is relatively simple. The CPIW reading from the third quarter of the current year is divided by the CPIW reading from the third quarter of the prior year. The increase is rounded to the nearest tenth of a percent, and that becomes the COLA in the following year. So for instance, the CPIW increased 2.5% in the third quarter of 2024. So Social Security benefits got a 2.5% COLA in 2025. So again, they are using the third quarter months. They're using July, August, and September. This, of course, is delayed. We don't actually receive the data until 1 month later, so we don't receive the inflation numbers for July until August. We don't receive the inflation numbers for August until September. That was the most recent data that we were able to get. And then we don't receive the September data until October. Now, once again, originally we were supposed to receive September's inflation data, the final month of the 3-month data that we need for the third quarter, on October 15th, but because of the government shutdown, that got pushed back a few more days to October 24th. It could, of course, actually been a lot worse. It was very possible. I was thinking that we may not actually have this data until some point in November if the government shutdown decided to continue to drag on, but they did decide to bring their staff back in for the Bureau of Labor Statistics just to compile that number so we would know what the Social Security cost of living adjustment increase was going to be for 2026. Now, they also here say that the Senior Citizens League, a nonpartisan advocacy group, initially predicted a 2.1% COLA in 2026, but the group has gradually raised its forecast throughout the year and now anticipates a 2.7% COLA. Similarly, independent policy analyst Mary Johnson raised her forecast from 2.1% in February to 2.8% in September. And I believe Mary Johnson actually had her initial forecast back in January for less than 2%. I think it was close to 1% of what she was predicting for the cost of living adjustment for 2026. She really believed that inflation was going to drop all the way down to 1% when compared to the third quarter of last year. So those were really, I guess she was really predicting that the inflation numbers would go down. But of course, in February, she projected at 2.1%. But still, it looks like it's going to be much higher than that. It's going to look like it's going to be 2.7 or 2.8% next year, as opposed to just 2.1%, which again is very surprising because this year we received a COLA of 2.5%. And inflation was expected to continue cooling. So you would expect something at least lower than 2.5%. Even if it was only 2.3 or 2.4%, you would definitely not expect something higher than 2.5%. And higher, it looks like, is what we are actually going to be getting. It looks like it's going to be 2.7 or 2.8%. Now they go on here to say that why are estimates trending higher? Inflation has accelerated since President Donald Trump began imposing tariffs earlier this year. The budget lab at Yale estimates the average tax on U.S. imports has risen to 16.7% when accounting for consumption shifts, the highest level since 1936, and that number excludes the additional 100% tariff Trump recently threatened on Chinese imports. The president's trade policies have already had a measurable impact on inflation. Inflation was just 2.3% in April, the lowest reading in 4 years, but Trump imposed a 10% baseline tariff on most countries that same month, and inflation has since accelerated, hitting 2.9% in August, and many economists expect that trend to continue as companies pass along more cost increases on tariff products. And that makes exactly sense. You know, if Walmart has to now pay 10% more on the products that they're getting, or even 100% more if they're getting the products from China, as threatened by Trump in his most recent post on Truth Social, if they're having to pay 10 to 100% more for the goods that they're buying to sell to consumers, what are they going to do? They're going to pass those costs along to consumers. So instead of initially, paying $1 for an item, you're now paying $1.10, $1.50, or even possibly $2. Worst case scenario, you're paying more for the goods and services that you used to, simply because these companies are now also having to pay more for the goods that they're bringing in to this country. Now they go on here to say that Social Security's 2026 COLA will almost certainly be 2.7 or 2.8%, barring an unexpectedly low or high inflation reading in September. The Social Security Administration will announce the official figure on October 24th, and beneficiaries will receive COLA notices by mail in December explaining their updated benefit amounts and any deductions. Those COLA notices will also be available through the My Social Security portal. So if you are on there, if you do have an account, you are going to receive all that information a lot quicker, as opposed to if you don't have an account on My Social Security, you're going to have to wait for a letter to arrive in the mail, which could be 2, 3, possibly even 4 weeks, depending how fast the U.S. Postal Service is. Now they go on here to say that in the meantime, we can use the latest forecast to guess how much extra Social Security income the average recipient can expect next year. The chart below lists the average monthly benefit for retired workers and spouses in August, and it shows how those amounts would change after a COLA of 2.7 or 2.8%. So you can see up on the screen, the average benefit for retired workers this year in 2025 as of August was right around $2,008 a month. So with a 2.7% COLA, you would receive a bump up to $2,062 a month. With a 2.8% COLA, it would be a couple dollars higher at $2,064 a month. So that would be a boost of anywhere between $54 to $56 a month. Now, once again, earlier this year, they were predicting a COLA of just 2.1%. So if that was true, if we ended up with a COLA of just 2.1%, that would be an increase up to $2,050 from $2,008. That would in fact only be an increase of right around $42 a month. And right now it looks like it's going to be, a boost up to $2,064 as opposed to just $2,050. So you're going to be receiving right around $14 more per month as opposed to what it was projected back in January or February this year, where they were expecting, once again, the cost of living adjustment to only be 2.1%. But with that said, leave your thoughts and comments below. What would you think about a 2.7 to 2.8% COLA? Do you think it would be enough to actually keep up with inflation? Leave your thoughts and comments below, but that's all we have for today's video, and I will see you in the next one.